Hello everyone, and this film review, or television review, is on the Doctor Who serial Spearhead from Space. I wrote this review 2 years ago. This is one of the most interesting Doctor Who stories ever made, plus it was different from any other Doctor Who that was made at the time. Firstly, it had a totally new look with a new Doctor Who and a new assistant. It was so different to the way it was before in the 1960s. This one was the first to be shown in the 1970s. It had its debut on BBC One on Saturday the 3rd of January 1970. It was the first one to be shot on film and to be made and transmitted in colour. Spearhead from Space is similar to the BBC's Quatermass 2, which was made 15 years earlier. Plus, in episode 2, when the Doctor makes his escape from the hospital, it is reminiscent from chapter 1 of the book An Actor Prepares. I know this serial word by word and frame by frame. There are many characters in this serial from all walks of life. Firstly, you have the scientists in the form of the new Doctor Who played by Jon Pertwee and his lovely new assistant Elizabeth Shaw. Next, you have the military being unit headed by the Brigadier and his subcoordinate Captain Monroe. In charge of them is the charming General Scobie, superbly played by the late Hamilton Dice. Next you have the baddies being the Autons. In charge of these killer mannequins is their leader Channing. Hugh Burden, who plays Channing, gives a boring and emotionless performance. He is not of the calibre of Hamilton Dice. Next up you have the victims in the form of factory manager George Hibbert and his associate John Ransom, who both end up getting killed by the Autons. Next you have the hospital staff being the bad-tempered Dr. Henderson and the long-suffering nurse, wonderfully played by Helen Dorward. Plus you've got Mullins, the nosy and gossiping hospital porter. Both Mullins and the museum waxworks attendant represent the little people in the workplace. Also there is the rest of the unit personnel and the local newspaper journalists. As with all journalists, they try very hard to get a scoop. Finally, there is Sam and Meg Seeley, the old country folk who dominate the story. Despite having false country accents which don't match up to their environment living in a remote rural area. The interesting thing about Spearhead from Space, it was twice released on video. It was the very first Doctor Who story to come out on DVD. Then, it was re-released on DVD again 10 years later as part of a box set, alongside its sequel Terror of the Autons. I've also since reviewed that Doctor Who serial. Finally, it came out on Blu-ray in 2013, and this is what I wrote at the time just over 2 years ago. This is the only one of the original Doctor Who's to be available on Blu-ray so far, even though they've released quite a few of the original serials, as we all know. It is a very tense and action-packed TV serial, product of its time. It looks more realistic than any of the Doctor Who stories. That were to come. Sorry about that. Every time I watch or study it, I find it enjoyable and exciting. And so that is my review that I wrote 2-3 years ago on this Doctor Who serial, Spearhead from Space. I hope you, the viewer, enjoy watching this review.